environments in Iraq and Afghanistan for a combined total of nearly 20 months. After that, this speaker spent from 2010 to 2015 as a KMO in South Korea. Now, I got to ask you, what is a KMO?
Knowledge management officer.
Knowledge management officer.
I manage the knowledge of the government. It was not a tax guy.
Someday I'll tell you about being in the war room in MacDill, and my partner stood up and said, "Colonel, what are you saying?" He said, we don't know what words go with the letters you're using. Everybody got a laugh out of it. The colonel was not amused. Prior to the decade with the Department of Defense, he spent a decade in computer and network administration and security in the private sector with a great deal of knowledge in electronic voting. His background is unique. It ranges from providing intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance support to the tip of the spear in Afghanistan, to pioneering tactical, clandestine, social media, psychological warfare capabilities for our military and for commercial use as well. If any of that sounds exactly like what the FBI indicted 13 Russians for doing, well, you wouldn't be wrong. So, Patrick Berge, welcome to Tea Party Manatee.
Thank you very much for inviting me out tonight. I think you're going to find this to be a very interesting story. I was actually stationed at MacDill as well. I was with JCSE, Joint Communication Support Element. Enlisted at 39 years old in 2005, and had my 40th birthday doing the live fire low crawl at Fort Benning. I was apparently the first 40-year-old to complete basic training in Fort Benning's history, according to that. There's a reason why you do it when you're 20, right? So it was quite a challenge, but it was funny because I had to figure out how to deal with the military, and the military had to figure out how to deal with a 40-year-old private, which kept it pretty interesting. And so I wrote a book. It's called Victim of the Swamp, How the Deep State Destroyed the 40-Year-Old Private, right? And so I'll have all that information and such on my website. And I wanted to go over a couple things, because unique as the story may be, with my enlistment at 40 and the experiences that I had in Afghanistan, and then a couple of years in combat zones, and after that as a contractor. Because when I came back from Afghanistan and with my reserve unit after my first deployment, I didn't have a job. I needed a job, so I took a job as a contractor for a company called Dynology. And Dynology was a very small, privately owned, family-owned company. And the owner of the company was General James Jones, who was the former NATO Supreme Allied Commander, 4-star general, right? A very respected individual. I don't mean to, anything I say tonight is not meant to cast dispersion on the career of a 4-star general, but it is to ask questions, right? That's what privates do. They ask questions of generals. Actually, I don't think they're supposed to do that, but that's what this one does. So, the problem that we have, and the problem that my story goes into, and how it ties in with everything that you've seen in the last few years, is because when I came back and I didn't have a job and I went to work with Dynology, I ended up going back overseas, and I worked on a contract. This was in 2007, so it's right about the time that we're starting to have the iPhone take off. Facebook was really starting to take off at that point, although it wasn't allowed on government networks. It was becoming very big at the time, 2007, 2008, 9, and 10. So what I was tasked with was converting the Force Psychological Operations Group from dropping flyers from planes to a more social media psychological warfare capabilities. So this could be both overt capabilities, like overt being completely open, the Voice of America, things like that, right? They're government-owned propaganda, right? So we help only, not wrong government, but so we we have these things, and they're good, right? They help explain to other countries and other nations what our freedoms are and what our beliefs are. And there's nothing wrong with that. It can be a very powerful tool. But we also helped make the capability, at least, right? So I'm not going to go into anything that we may or may not have done with this capability. But the capability that we built also had to be capable of navigating the dark web, navigating terrorist websites, right? So you got terrorists that have administrators, right? When you think of like terrorist websites, don't think of a cave, right? This is example, the Syrian Electronic Army. Most cybersecurity guys, and I've got almost 20 years in cybersecurity, right? So I'm almost 20 years in IT security, network security, and such like that. So this is sort of a wheelhouse of mine. And you can't just assume that, oh, these guys are just like terrorists and stuff. They're living in caves, and that they're not, right? They have the Syrian Electronic Army, actually, most serious IT people pegged them for the Sony hack back a few years back, right? So they were a very well organized, well trained, very powerful organization, right? And they a huge amount of the stolen data, stolen credit cards, dark web action, some of the viruses that you've seen a few years ago. Remember a few years ago when viruses were locking up hospitals and freezing up all their files, and if you paid them X amount of money, it might unfreeze it. Some of those things are really, when I see that, those are the first things I look for, like the Syrian Electronic Army, then, you know, maybe North Korea, China, Russia, right? Russia is a country that on a day that ends in Y will be trying to hack something. One of the original networks, one of the original like hacking networks was called the RBN, the Russian Business Network. Sounds extremely innocuous, but the RBN was actually one of the first main like dark web type environments that at one time launched like 90% of all viruses in the world, right? But this isn't like a government-run thing. It's not like Putin sitting back there releasing viruses. These are just like criminals that are, you know, doing what criminals do. So you don't want to treat them like a state. You don't want to treat them like a child either, because they can do a lot of damage. But so we have to be able to navigate these. We have to be able to go in there. We have to be able to sometimes appear as though we are not who we are. You have to be able to appear. If you look like you're coming from Virginia on a licensed Windows 10 computer and you're trying to, you know, infiltrate a terrorist organization in Afghanistan, chances are that administrator of that site's going to go, this guy's, you know, he's not one of us, and you're going to lose it. So we had to be able to provide that capability to be able to navigate, being anyone you wanted to be, looking like you were anywhere in the world. I could literally make it look like I was sending an email from the Kremlin. There is not one single, there wasn't at the time, all the way up to 2010, I guarantee you now, they still couldn't. There wasn't one single government agency, federal agency, CIA, NSA, and I even tested it against a lot of these guys, right? That could literally tell that it was me sending it from the beach in Clearwater, you know, sending an email from the Kremlin, right? So when I saw what was happening, transpiring in 2016, just before the election, and you know, we started getting into the Russia, and after the DNC emails were hacked. Within just a few days of that, the incident with the DNC emails, we had like several intelligence agencies coming out saying, "Oh, we've tracked it down. It's the Russians." And I'm like, well, you know, the Russians are probably, I wouldn't say as good as me, but they're really good, right? So they're not going to leave breadcrumbs going right back to Russia. I would leave breadcrumbs going to Russia if I didn't want to look like it was coming from me, right? So I leave things to throw you off the track. I use proxies, I use VPN. There's just so many ways that I can make it that at best, maybe a couple years, if you found it's really impossible, right? So when they come out after 3 days and say, oh, the Russians did this, I said, well, it wasn't the Russians. You know, we can rule them out because they were the first place that you look is the last place that it was. I originally thought, and don't get me wrong, right? I love Israel, you know, I'm very supportive. I'm a Christian man, and I support Israel. And we did horrible things. Obama, when I say we, Obama did really, really bad things to Israel. So I pointed towards Israel as being the likely culprits behind the DNC email. But I didn't blame them because we did it to them. We tried to influence, Obama tried to influence their elections, right? So what are you going to do? You're going to come back and are they going to sit around and let a third term Obama come in? So and this was before, and I had published these things. I've done radio interviews. This is in 2016. Captain Matt, right? Some people listen to Captain Matt. I was on his show in 2016, 3 months before the election, saying exactly this. That there are threat actors, Russia, China, threat actors domestically within our country that are using the same capabilities that I developed for the Department of Defense to influence the 2016 presidential election. And why do I know that? Am I like the psychic hotline? No, because when we finished building this, and if this doesn't upset you guys a little bit, I don't know what will. When we finished building this taxpayer appropriated project for the Force Psychological Operations Group, we spent a year, had their greatest minds of the PSYOP group telling us exactly what they needed to build and how they needed to build it. And we build it all up, and then we lose the contract in a rebid. This company came in and underbid us. And so we leave, but when we leave, we took the software with us. Everything that we did, everything that the taxpayers paid for, which is a lot of money, right? I made $240,000 that 1 year. 100,000 of it was tax-free because I was overseas, foreign earned income. And we kept it, Dynology kept it, and we brought it back to the States. And we actually talked about, how are we going to use this commercially? So we made up flyers, and we made up, we literally planned out, well, we can sell this to police departments to help for pedophiles, right, to be able to go through there. But we can also use it to influence elections. I mean, this tool helped bring the Sunni and the Shia together, or keep them together for the most part, and reduce the violence in Iraq. There are a lot of people on the team, people on the third floor at Awful Palace, General Petraeus, right? Answered directly to General Petraeus. There are people that will tell you that the work that our small team of people did in influencing in helping to maintain this cohesion, this truce between the Sunnis and Shias to fight with Americans against the Al-Qaeda in Iraq, AQI, who were killing everybody. They were killing Americans, they were killing Sunnis, they were killing Shias. We got them to work with us, fight with us, their different communities, different neighborhoods. They worked, Sunni and Shia now stood side by side at these checkpoints, making sure that any traffic going into their community was not going to be a truck bomb, right? And they worked together. And this had such a profound impact. And this was at the time that Obama and McCain were running for office, and John McCain's like, we got to send 30,000 more troops over there. And everybody on our team was like, no, don't send more people. Just let us do our job. Let's let these guys, let the Iraqis, the Sunnis and the Shias, do like we did with our civil war. They will appreciate it more. Let's let them fight it. And they were doing really good. If you Google it, it was known also as the Sons of Iraq. We were working with them, right? And they were really strong. They were a great fighting team. They loved their country. And I had a great deal of respect for them, right? Sons of Iraq were very good. They would have died for an American just as fast as we would have fought for them, right? So let's leave them to do their thing. And we really had a major impact. A lot of people will say, like I said, that the reduction in violence that allowed Obama to eventually say, hey, it's time to go, which Would have been not a bad idea if you could have worked out a status of forces agreement that would have protected us while we were still remain there. But yeah, we actually, it was so powerful, it helped us pull out of Iraq, right? You've probably never heard of this. You would have never imagined it. So you hear on TV, you've heard for the last couple of years, so much of the, from like 30,000 feet, what social media, psychological warfare can do. You know, oh my God, but all you've heard was it was the Russians, it was Trump. It had nothing to do with Trump, and when you see what I get into here in a minute, you'll see why. This was so powerful. I came back, I'm telling everybody that, listen, all of these things cannot be ignored, right? Yet everybody ignored me. Everybody ignored everything that I was saying. Let me do this here real quick to show you here. This is I did an interview with Ann Vandersteel like a week ago or so. It's my second one with her, and she actually went through. I sent her my DD-214s, the other documents that I had to verify where I was, what I did, the work that I did. So I've actually had journalists verify all of this, what I'm saying. Here we go. There we go. So there are really two components to the social media psychological warfare. What you see on TV, what we spent the last couple of years dealing with is nothing, right? You have the one component, which is the dissemination of the content, right? So you would create new, in IIA, it's called IIA, Interactive Internet Activities. That's the military nomenclature for this. In IIA, and this is me at the in front of the sign of the Force Psychological Operations Group in Iraq, that's me. And here we are. This is a shot of the actual application, the commercial shot of it, right? It was called, we called it the ShadowNet. That was not a classified name for it. I can't discuss the classified name for it. But this was a commercial name for it. This product, which was owned by Dynology, which was owned by a very small, Dynology is like a 15-person company, very small, owned by literally Obama's national security advisor, right? So Obama's national security advisor is profiting now from the commercial sale of an application, the same thing that we indicted the Russians for. Obama's national security advisor is profiting from this when taxpayers paid for it. And the sad thing is, all the work that we did over there for the Force Psychological Operations Group, when the new company came in that had won the contract, they had to start over from scratch, right? So think about the readiness that does. Think about how that degrades the capability. It makes General Jones a much nicer wine cellar, right? It makes his family. People get upset with Donald Trump because, oh, God forbid, Ivanka might profit off in selling shoes, right? And I'm like, oh my God, Obama was profiting off of, or his national security advisors profiting off of defense contracts. I think that's a little more serious than shoes, right? So I'm looking at all of this over the past 2 years as just being the height of hypocrisy. And I wrote it, so that's largely why I wrote the book, right? I'm trying to get this message out. I'm trying to go around and show people that this is a huge problem. So there are two components of the ShadowNet. There was the ShadowNet and then there was ISI. The ShadowNet helps with like the dissemination of the content, right? So if you create news, let's say you make fake news. Let's say you're the Smollett guy, right? And you are working as a contractor in an organized IIA, tactical IIA, PSYOP, right? You need to be able to disseminate. So you create fake content, right? Let's use the dossier as an example. But when you see where I'm going with this, everybody that's had their hands on the dossier, was part of my program. All right? So that's why it gets interesting, right? How do you take everything you see about the dossier? How many times have you heard on the news someone talk about, well, hey, sure, we suspect who was monkey business with like the FBI and Stroke and Page and everybody, but who's powerful enough within our government to actually implement something like this? Who's powerful enough within our government to work with former FSB or former KGB, current FSB, that actually provided some of the content for that dossier? Who's capable of working with the British government? GCHQ. Why do they keep calling the guy a former spy? Is anybody, once you're a spy, aren't you kind of still a spy? So this former spy, I don't know. Did someone just did he submit a resignation or something? I resigned from being a spy. I'm not a spy anymore. I'm just doing everything a spy would do. I'm making more money at it because I'm a contractor now, but let's call it a spy, right? So this spy, who has the ability to organize and control all these people? Then you have you have the creation of a document. But then you have the dissemination of that document. How do you disseminate it so it cannot be attributable to the people who made it? So attribution, it was my forte, right? That's one of the things the ShadowNet was for. So let's say somebody decides they want to put this dossier together, and now they need to be able to get it out to the media. They need to be able to get it into portions of the government. Well, how do you do that? Well, you use the ShadowNet, you use a dissemination process, you use assets that are already in place, paid journalists, whatever you need to do, right? And you use these individuals to put your content out, to disseminate your fabricated content. Okay, so that's the first part, right? The second part is the collection of the data, right? And this is something that I think you guys are going to love with this, because you have not heard anything about this, I guarantee you, on the news. No one will ever talk about it. It was briefly mentioned, like in the New York Times, where this company, Side Group, approached the Trump campaign, and I owe the Trump campaign an apology, right? I think like every Democrat does too, because I'm just assuming in 2016 that every candidate is going to be using the thing that we made commercially available, the thing that we literally made flyers for, if I could find them here, the thing that we literally made flyers for, people are going to be using, right? That was the purpose for bringing it back here. If a Senate race costs $30 million, right, for a politician to normally win, and I can walk up to you and say, well, I can do it for $1.5 million, I can guarantee that you're going to win. How many politicians do you know would actually turn that down? I don't know any, So, but the mistake I made when I just assumed everybody running was going to is that Donald Trump isn't a politician. I mean, that's why I voted for him. And it just came out with the Mueller indictments that he was literally approached to do these things, and they said no. He, according to the New York Times article, they did an article about the Mueller indictments. Mueller tied this company, Wikistrat and Side Group, to the campaign. They didn't actually do anything, but they submitted a proposal. When you look at that proposal, and after having listened to what I described to you guys, and you listen to that, and you look at that proposal, you're going to say the same thing I did. That's a ShadowNet, and that's ISI, right? These are, and then when you look at the companies, and I gotta be able to pull this up here, I'm killing myself. When you look at the companies that were all tied together, Wikistrat and Side Group has the same ownership as, here we go, that'll have it right there. Wikistrat and Side Group has the same ownership as everybody else. So this is a list of people, that are connected to the ShadowNet. You can't, I don't have any idea why that's not on the page right now. Maybe I have it down here. No, I do not. But I can go off that, right? There it is. So, here I am in 2007, all right? This was the team that I had. I answered directly to General Jones. So if you think I'm like one of these little Twitter sleuths or something, just sort of, you know, following something down, that's not me. I literally, that's me, okay? So here's the ShadowNet, 2007. General Jones, this is Dynology, small family-owned company. There's the ShadowNet, that's me. Now, at the same time that we were building this in 2007, I didn't know this, I was in Iraq building it, right? But I didn't know this, but 3EDC was our #1 preferred partner. So Paul Manafort, 3EDC is Paul Manafort's company. Manafort, Rick Davis, and the other Rick, they're all part of 3EDC. So everybody here, Davis, Manafort, and the other guy, they were all working with Dynology at the same time. And by the way, their company, their business, was selling targeted social media, right? So targeted social media solutions to campaigns. If you look at John McCain's 2008 campaign, their donations from, or the contributions from 3EDC, it's exactly what they list. Micro-targeted social media, right? So the same time these guys are running McCain's main campaign, I'm selling this commercially at this point. Interestingly enough, Dynology was John McCain's IT company during his primary. Does that get any closer to John McCain? Which John McCain, when I saw John McCain's hands on the dossier, I was like, okay, this is the gang here. They're doing their thing, right? That's what we do. But we don't do it to our country. We don't do it to our own people, which is why I'm standing here, right? I could care less. It's a very powerful thing. If we can use this, if we can stop a war before it even starts, I'm fine with that. But if you're going to use it to determine the next senator, the next congressman, the next mayor, the next president of the United States, I got a problem with that, right? So you got all these guys. We're doing the primary. As soon as the primary ended, Dynology, 3EDC took over from Dynology, right? Now, General Jones is a lifelong friend of John McCain's, 40 years. John McCain was General Jones's captain. So John McCain, we know, had his hands on that dossier, right? We know that there are his close friend within his one of his close friends said that, you know, we just came out a few weeks ago. I can't think of the guy's name now, but he was a guy that handed off to BuzzFeed and all of the news stations, right? And this guy's directly connected to John McCain. I have you keep going down. General Jones was the NATO Supreme Allied Commander. By the way, his company started in 2001, or 2000, just before 9/11. So the NATO Supreme Allied Commander, should he be profiting, should his family have a defense contracting company? Do we have a raise of hands who think that's a good idea? The guy literally in charge of keeping us, you know, to protecting us from Russia, and yeah, you think anybody's got to, if you agree with what I'm saying, and that the DNC emails, it was just a false flag going to Russia. Can you think of anybody who would want to point it towards Russia more than former NATO Supreme Allied Commander, who is no longer a NATO Supreme Allied Commander, who now owns Jones Group International, which is according to the New York Times and others, the largest Middle Eastern oil lobbying firm in DC, right? So again, his company's a lobbying firm for Middle Eastern oil. Why would I think this guy would have anything to do with trying to harm Russia, right? It's just a horrible, in my opinion, and I hope that's what you guys take from this. We don't have to convict anybody of being connected to the dossier tonight. We can certainly say that there's a lot of things that I truly believe, and I've requested a classified briefing to Devin Nunes, to Lindsey Graham, to everybody. And no one's even returning my calls. I called Mueller a year and a half ago and told him about this part. I didn't know about anything from here on. But I sure as heck knew that I had developed this application, and at the same time I developed this application, this guy was our partner. And now you're looking at him, so I think this is relevant information. I told Mueller, right? And then all of a sudden, all of the indictments that Mueller starts coming up with are all directly connected to these people. Here you've got, this is actually right here. You've got two more people up there. I can't see their names right now. This is Joel Zamel. He's the owner of Wikistrat, which is it's an Israeli-owned company. General Jones is on the board of Wikistrat. He's on their board. Now, keep in mind, Wikistrat and Cygroup, they sell the exact same product as Dynology, right? So why, in my opinion, that's like having the CEO, the owner of Coke on the board of Pepsi. Would that happen? Right? That's good questions to ask. So when I saw Wikistrat, and I follow Dan Bongino a lot, he points, he throws people away, and I'm like, it's wow, these guys can't be anything. Everybody he throws away, I pick up and attach them to my application. So you've got these companies that are they're the exact same thing. These are the same people owning the same companies, all having the same product. Wikistrat is if you read articles about Wikistrat, most people say that WikiLeaks is Wikistrat. How do you like that? Which makes sense. Think about what I've been telling you that I did, that I pioneered for these people. I'm jealous of that, right? That's exactly what I would do. I've literally written white papers almost identical to the leaking of the DNC emails, and those white papers are the intellectual property right of Obama's national security advisor. I literally may have written the white papers on doing that. I'm not a bad guy. It was, but it's just astounding to me that I've literally gone to my congressman. I provided him all these things, memorandums showing that what I did, who I worked with, and saying that I would like. There's some things that I can say. There's talking commercially about the capabilities of a commercial product. Nothing